Mitra, this is a continuation of our conversation about conflict. And in our last episode, we opened up what is known as the framework for nonviolent communication by Dr. Rosenberg. He wrote a whole book on it. Our conversation is inspired by that. We started off by saying that, okay, step one is to observe the facts, what actually happened. Then step two is to observe how did that make us feel, then to understand what our actual needs are, and then to have the conversation with the person, and if there's a request to be made, to make a request. But each one of these, there's so much there. And so let's spend some time clarifying for each one of these steps, what is the correct way to go about doing it, and what are common misunderstandings. In step one, it's about noticing and observing what actually happened. So, in your experience, what are common misunderstandings of this step?
The common misunderstanding of the first step is that we see it from the eyes of emotional self, not from factual self. So normally we start saying that you or they, and that's a good place to stop because observation requires events and facts and doesn't really require people. You started a fight, you told me off, you came late. These are all statements that cover up the fact. And people, of course, as soon as I say that, or they say that, is the objection is, but they did come late. They did, but we have to go to a different place in order to resolve our issue. We need to identify the issue or issues, because as long as I think you are the problem, there's no way that I can come to a peaceful communication and resolution with you, because I see you as a problem. And until you change as a person, which is almost an impossibility for me to order that change, I will not be happy with the result. So the most common misunderstanding is that we confuse accusation and whose fault it is with what the facts were. So the question is completely different. The question is what happened, not whose fault it was. We started our meeting late is an accurate account, a neutral account of, for instance, me being late or you being late. Mitra, as you know, we started our meeting late today. Yeah, I do know. First of all, I'm not activated by that statement. I may feel a little bit bad if it was I was the reason, but there is no defending because there's no attacking.
So I'm going to elaborate on this further with in my experience. So there are times when I've spoken to someone and they've spoken to me in a certain tone that I perceived, let's say, as an angry tone. And so I might be compelled to say, I noticed you were talking to me in an angry tone.
Yeah.
That's an interpretation, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the only thing I noticed is the tone of the voice. Any definition or judgment of that tone is my interpretation of it, whether it be, I noticed your tone was angry, aggressive, inconsiderate. Those are all my own projections of what actually happened. Yeah, so another one is, for example, if someone forgot to do something, quote unquote forgot, right? To say, I noticed you forgot to close the door on your way out is also an interpretation. Maybe he intentionally left the door open when he moved out. So the noticing really is, I noticed the door was left open when you walked out.
Exactly.
Right? These are nuances, and they seem so subtle, but they make such a difference when we have the conversation with the person, because it takes the charge out of it completely.
Exactly. And we are so habitually practiced are, and that's why Dr. Rosenberg called it violent communication, because there is violence in that. When I keep accusing you, keep basically seeing your faults, it becomes violent, because when I'm attacking, you're defending, and hence we have a war zone energy and exchange between us. Because as human beings, as soon as I'm attacked, I will defend because I want to survive, right? It is true in verbal communication. It is true in physical communication and physical exchange. And it's true in energetic exchanges. So the moment you change the way you speak to me, first of all, you have to bring your awareness and go out of the war zone and into a neutrality, that that space that allows you to see things. For you to just, I always say to people, just do the first step of this style of communication. Don't worry about the rest. Just learn and practice reporting, starting the conversation with the facts. What is going on instead of who did it? Very simple. I make it always simple because I only understand simple things. So when I think about something, I ask myself, but what took place? What is it that I want to report on? What I want to report on is the fact, exactly like what you said about communication, that our communication is not how we normally communicate. Instead of thinking Ben is angry with me or he was inappropriate with me, I can just notice that and even say that. And I say, Ben, today our communication is not how it normally is. And that's it. I leave it at that, because now I'm just indicating a fact that doesn't have fault in it. There is no accusation, even though, and I always say that because I know I've heard it for 30 years. People say, but he was angry. I say, sure, he was, maybe in my evaluation. I'm no medical, professional, but what I can see is that what's taking place is not how it is. I allow you as an independent, free human being to share or not why what's going on is going on. Otherwise, when I identified, when I really, it's not identify even, it's diagnose. We're diagnosing each other all the time, especially now with terminologies that I have. You're OCD, you're angry, you're this, you have ADHD, these are words and exchanges that cannot produce peaceful outcomes unless we really do a U-turn in the middle of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to bring up the example that you gave. You mentioned, I noticed the way we communicated today is not the way we normally communicate. I personally would hesitate even phrasing it that way.
How
I
would you
would,
praise it?
because even normal is interpretive, right? To the other person, it'd be like, well, to me, the way we communicated is how we always communicate. So the way I would just say it is, all I noticed is, I would say, for example, I noticed your tone of voice. I wouldn't have any judgment about the tone of voice. I wouldn't say it was bad or whatnot. I just noticed the tone of your voice, and I usually will clarify what imagination it gave me. It made me imagine that maybe you're angry or frustrated at
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
And
that would be the one thing that they say you don't need to say, because then if I'm not ready to share that or acknowledge that or even see that I am angry, then I will start defending. And that's exactly what starts the whole thing. You see, you still made it about me. I made it about the exchange. And maybe there's a better way of saying it, but it needs to be about the exchange, not about the person. Because you still, I mean, there's always judgment, by the way. So if you're looking for absolute no judgment, it won't happen. You're right, an interpretation of what is normal. But there is something that you and I know, if we have a history, especially for family or friend, we know what is the common way of speaking. That's not that much of an interpretation. We both know in real time how that feels like. But if I go to the person, the moment I say, Ben, I think you, doesn't matter what it is, you will go to a different place. But as long as I make it about the exchange, it makes it easier. So that's the rule number one, basically, for NVC. Make it as much as you can. And of course, there are some situations that are easier than others. Make it about the event, not the person. Imagine the person doesn't exist. How would you report on that? They used to do this practice that can you report without ever mentioning the people involved.
Yeah.
That was a great practice. The room is in this state. I never said who did it and whose stuff is on the floor, or this happened, is happening. So if there were no human beings involved, how would you report on what's going on?
I think we're saying similar things. I just think what you're saying is the whole story that we're telling ourselves, we don't necessarily need to share that. We can realize for ourselves when we look at the facts, we state the facts, there is no blaming. When we're able to look at the facts, we're able to recognize for ourselves the story that we're adding or the projection that we are adding. I oftentimes will share what my imagination or my story is, not to blame them. And it's always prefaced with, this is the story that I'm telling myself, and I take responsibility for that. But that's what I'm telling myself, and that's what it has made me feel. But I also understand how we can approach this without needing to share that story, right? As long as we follow the full framework.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so following the framework, we go to the next step. And the next step is identifying the feelings, what it has made us feel, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
can you clarify what is a feeling and what is not a feeling?
So, first of all, I want you to see how meticulously this system is designed to take you inside of you and not outside of you, starting with the facts. And the next step, of course, if I start by saying, I think you're angry, or my story is that you're angry, my attention is on you. But the system is designed for me to go in. I see the event, and now whenever something is going on, there is a translation of it in my body, especially if it's something that is out of neutrality. So there is always a translation of events within us. We call them feelings. So something is born in me as a result of what I am witnessing and seeing and reporting. Okay. First of all, reporting of it affects the way I feel too. If I said that I think you're angry, my attention is on anger and you. When I reported a normalcy or abnormality of our discussion, my focus is staying within the discussion and the exchange, not the people involved, because that's where the mind wants to go. In survival mode, this is my addition to the system. In fear and survival, we're always looking for the perpetuator, whose fault it is. And I want to make sure that it's not my fault. And if it's only two people involved and it's not my fault, it must be you. So it's just fascinating how the mind works in the fear state of fear. So the question is, what was born in me as a result of witnessing what happened? What energies in motion, were born because of what I saw? And why is that important? One is because we want to acknowledge that something happened when I saw that. And I want to acknowledge it. The moment I acknowledge it, I take away its hidden power. We've talked about this. The power of vagueness and being covered up is far more than the power it may have when it's identified and named and acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the first thing. But what is important for acknowledging that is that these are all my words, not Dr. Rosenberg's words. So I just want to say that just in case NVC experts are listening and say, where did you get these things from? I have developed my own way of understanding and teaching it. The moment I understand what emotions are in me, and for the sake of this discussion, I'm using emotions and feelings interchangeably, even though I don't believe they're the same. But for this discussion, we're going to use them interchangeably. So the emotion that I recognize, I either feel them out or act them out. When I understand what's going on, there's a better chance that I feel them out. What does that mean? That I let it go through me and I let that be an experience in the moment as opposed to something that I need to act out. Let's say I also get angry by watching you being angry, which is the
Mm.
two sort of difficult and extreme emotions. When I acknowledge that I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling like this like tension, contraction in my body, I really, there, I can feel it. There's a charged emotion coming. And I have a good chance, an opportunity to just allow that to go through me. Because if an energy is born, an emotion is moving through me and I let it, it will go through me. But when I get it stuck, when I don't allow it, when I don't acknowledge it, when I don't, I call it, give it visa to enter me, then I am acting it out. Because this energy has to go somewhere. Energy is born, and as you know, energy never dies. The question is, what do I do with this energy that was born because of me witnessing the events that I'm reporting on?
Yep.
So fascinating what happens. And I tell you later, once we talk about this, why identifying it beside feeling it out is important, because it feeds the next step of the process.
Yeah. Very consistent with my own experience. When I can't name what I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
then that unease just grows inside of me. It doesn't have a channel. But also, when I turn it inwards,
Mm-hmm.
it's also a massive shift because when I'm blaming it outside on that person, what that person said and how it made me feel and how unfair it is, then that energy is moving out towards them. And it's actually not moving in a positive way. It's just kind of reinforcing itself. But when I turn my awareness inside and I realize, wait, this is actually not about the other person. This is triggering something deeper in me. What is this making me feel? Then the capacity to be able to hold space for that emotion and let it run its course through me is much easier. It's much more available to me. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I have a command of doing something about it. Because if I make it about you, I feel out of what people call out of control. There is no way that I can control you in a sustainable way. So I feel frustrated. I feel I'm not getting anywhere, and I feel out of control myself. That's why the idea is to spend that attention and that energy for your inner self and bringing your attention to yourself, because I have a command of myself, but I have no control over you.
So let's give people some vocabulary for feelings, right?
Mhm.
So some of the feelings, common feelings that, and there aren't really that many, right? So there's anger, there's a feeling, um, sadness is a feeling, jealousy is a feeling in my experience. I categorize it, I should say, as a feeling.
Frustrated, disappointed, these are all feelings. There's actually a whole list of feelings that, if you want, we can attach. That it's these are the common feelings. It doesn't mean that if you have something that you call a feeling, it's not a feeling. The only thing that it's not a feeling is feelings that we attribute to other people. So
Mm-hmm.
when I say you make me feel, whatever happens after that, even though famous song says that, is inaccurate, because you are incapable of making me feel anyway. My feelings are my feelings. Things may provoke it, remind me of, but unless I have them, you cannot give birth to them. You may bring them to the surface, So if, as my teacher used to say, if you do not have an orange, you cannot give me orange juice. You have to have an orange in order to give me an orange juice. So this is the idea that you cannot give me a feeling or make me feel like, even though we romantically or angrily may say so, my feelings are my feelings, and they get to come to the surface for different reasons. And feelings are experiences that belong to me, and if they are in me, they will come up. If they are not, you cannot, no event can, no person can make them happen or be born.
Yeah, and I'm going to clarify also, there is the phrase of, I felt that you were being rude, or I felt that you don't care about me. So just like a further nuance about a misuse of feeling. And I know Dr. Rosenberg was very particular about this, about what comes after I feel, and to be
Yes.
very careful to not use it in that context because it's not accurate. Yeah.
Exactly. Every feeling that we have, you see, it's all about us, not you made me feel, but what I have is based on needs, met needs and unmet needs. It's very simple. We keep it simple so at least I can understand it. So right now, if I am okay with what's going on between us, that means my needs of, say, connection has been met. So when my feelings are provoked, they are indicative of something deeper, which is needs that I have. Needs are the least seen aspect of ourselves as human beings. We rarely think about our needs. I wait until I'm really angry, and then I will say my needs that are really requests. That's very interesting. So, but I put them as a need. I need you to do this for me. That's not a need, by the way. This is the most unhealthy way of recognizing our needs. Our needs are based on ourselves, and wanting somebody's behavior to be a certain way for me to feel good, that means that I misunderstood my needs, and I'm also have learned to meet my needs through somebody else. I have let go of my own command of my life. So needs are very, very basic. Needs are like, there are just so many needs that we have. We need connection. We need satisfaction of our bodily functions. I need to be hungry. I need shelter. I mean, everybody knows about the hierarchy of needs. There's the spiritual needs. There are like intellectual needs. They're very clear. Needs are clear.
And they're
And
generally universal. The
yes,
needs they're not
absolutely.
specific to a person. Everybody generally, trust is a need that everybody has. Most everybody has, right? Connection is a common need. It's a universal need. The sense of belonging, being
Yes.
understood. So these
Yes.
are these are
Yeah.
very foundational, and generally I think it's a good test. Is this something that universally people would consider a need for them? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's a very important point, Ben, to understand that our needs as human being are very common, very universal, and often they're intermingle with each other. In usually, I mean, if you're here, our need to connect to each other, or our need to communicate and impart what we know and share, these are all parts of our human needs. That's very true. And what you see, we have gone through this huge investigation, if you like, and observation, but we haven't even brought the other person into the foreground yet. I thought I was having problems because of you, because you were angry. But you see, I've gone through a journey of identifying the facts and my observation, and then going in and looking at my feelings, and now identifying my needs, and I haven't even brought you into it. And that's the whole philosophy, that my journey is inwardly. It is because of that lack of inward journey that I go out and attack and become violent in my communication, because I'm compensating for self-connection, for self-observation, self-expression, and self-growth. So now I'm making you the reason for all of that. And then of course I want to attack you. But once I go in, I realize that there's a whole world happening within the world that I'm objecting to, that actually this one has far more chaos than I'm willing to admit or see.
Yeah. Let's just clarify some more, just a couple more examples that are of not needs, right? So we know anytime it's I need you to do something, it's not a need. But also, for example, how about I have a need to eat dinner at a certain time? It doesn't involve the other person, but we're calling that a need, and that's not the need, right? The need could be I have a need for, what would you say, for stability,
Yes.
right? So the core need is to have stability. So it's not necessarily to have dinner at a certain time, it's
Yes.
stability, right?
Exactly. Stability, presence, connection. For me to connect, that's very understandable. I want to make sure that my basic needs of food is satisfied. So it's not the
Mm-hmm.
hour. It is that the fact that if you want me to be present, which is by the way true for me, I always eat and take care of my basic needs in order to be fully present, because half of my attention will be on food if I'm not fed properly. So my
Yeah.
need for connection can get satisfied when I have taken care of my need for food. But I need to eat it at 8 o'clock is not a need.
Yeah.
It's the need that is expressed in a way. And why are we being sticky about the expression of them? Because this is also important. We are, because then when I express my needs in the wrong way, I will fulfill them in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Then I think 8 o'clock is my, God-given like hour. Whereas really what it is to anticipate my need for nutrition and rest and sleep and whatever it is that I may have. And then the need for connection. And that's why there is a hierarchy of needs, because if I'm not fed, I cannot be, we have a saying in Farsi that they haven't been starved in order to forget that they are in love,
Yeah.
because once you're starved and your basic need is not met, it becomes difficult to go to the other need, which is the need for connection and love. So yes, it is the way we think about our needs that make them easier to be fulfilled or more difficult to be fulfilled. And by the way, that I need you to do this for me to be happy also delays my happiness, because now in my head, because I said so, I'm waiting for you to do this. Otherwise I cannot be happy. I'm actually giving up the ticket, the freedom of being on my own, able to fulfill it to you, whoever you are to me. You may be my child. I still am giving it up to you and taking no responsibility for fulfilling it myself.
Yeah, and getting just to this step, right, already can provide so much clarification and might even resolve the whole thing to begin with. As
Yes.
I go through these steps, I might realize, oh, I have a need for connection, and I'm assuming that because he or she didn't say hi to me, that I'm not getting that connection. But no, I'm realizing, wait, that's just my own, that's a story I'm telling myself. And then I
Yes.
realize all the other examples of where I'm actually getting connection for the person. So that conflict is in it of itself. This is a more subtle example, is resolved. Of course, we have bigger conflicts that we deal with, and it would require to move to the next step, which is getting clear on a request. And I know this part can be very tricky in
Mhm.
particular. So, first of all, what is a request? Let's clarify that. So, we've clarified our needs. Now it's time for us to get clear on if we have a request of that other person, what that request is. What is a request?
Okay. So first of all, I have arrived at identifying my needs and I'm now thinking about fulfilling them, right? And in that fulfillment, I may need help. And this is very important. I don't want you to do it. I want to do it, but I do need your assistance. It's important to see it as an assistance as opposed to as another person doing it for me when we get to request. And we here distinguish between request and demand. Demand means you do not have a say. I'm asking and you better do it. And by better, it doesn't mean that I'm going to beat you up, but there will be consequences if you say no. But request is very open-ended. Would you be willing to, is the statement that Dr. Rosenberg starts with, but in your own language, because language has changed these days, especially for younger people. Will you do this? Will you be willing to, can you help me with this? However you say it, the energy behind it, the intention behind it is far more important than the words you use, but it needs to be open-ended, meaning there needs to be room for me to say no. This aspect of saying no, ability and permission, allowance actually is a better word, allowance and ability to say no is extremely important in a healthy communication and in a healthy relationship. So I ask you, Ben, would you be willing to, I don't know, give me a ride today? Right. And I need help with something. But if my expectation is that you do not have the right or you shouldn't say no, then this request is void. I might as well just order you to do it. So what I'm saying is we can't sugarcoat our own intention with right words. I need to really understand that you as a human being who has his own life, his own challenges and his own schedule has the right to say, no, Mitra, sorry, not today. And then you don't need to even explain anything further than that. You've evaluated your day and you've evaluated your schedule, or you say, if you're very wise and you are, you say, I'll let you know soon. So you're buying time to evaluate that. Just let me check my schedule and I'll get back to you, which allows you to evaluate your own needs and your own feelings around this and answer something that really serves you and serves our relationship. So the most common mistake is we mix demand with request.
Yeah.
Request is open-ended, allows no on both sides, and there are no consequences and punishment. I can be disappointed. I feel disappointed that you said no. That's fine. I can feel whatever I want to, but there won't be consequences. Our friendship will not be in danger. I will not say no to you because I remember you did not say no to me in 1998. It won't be, that kind of revengeful behavior. We're allowing no because we know everybody has the freedom to say no for whatever reasons that you may or may not want to share with me.
Yeah. Very different energy to say, I need you to say hi to me when you come home versus, are you willing to, for us to chat a little bit when you come home? So very different energy.
Yes.
And to really bring this home, let's give an example. Let's create a scenario. Okay. If we have time, let's create two scenarios. One more simple scenario, maybe one a bigger quote unquote scenario or a more challenging one. So in the first scenario, let's imagine that there are two partners, right? And I'll be play one of the partners, and I'm noticing that my partner over the last few weeks has been coming home, hasn't really been acknowledging me like they usually do. They have been keeping to themselves,
Mhm.
and it has been making me feel uncomfortable. Okay.
Right.
And I want to address this with my partner. Why don't you walk us through the steps now
Okay. So
with this
you
scenario?
notice that, first of all, the fact is, what is the fact of this event? The fact is that the greeting and the connection is not taking place when you come home or when they come home, correct? Okay.
It's more than greeting. I'm just observing that greeting is one aspect of it. I'm
The
noticing that
connection.
the connection is not as there. They just seem to be more to themselves, and I feel
Okay.
more distance. I'm
Okay.
not. I
You're
feel more
feeling
distance. I'm
distant.
gonna correct this.
Uh,
I'm I'm experiencing more distance from them.
okay.
Yeah.
So the fact is we're not receiving each other, or the arrival, I don't know at what time this is happening. Our arrival is not as warm as it used to be,
Maybe
right?
even saying that I just noticed we're not talking as much, or where there isn't as
But the
much
problem is not
conversation.
talking. But it's not talking that it's a problem. It's the warmth that it's a problem. If you just hugged when you arrived, you hugged your partner and said nothing, that would have been enough, because you need to identify the problem. Otherwise, your partner will talk a lot, but there won't be any warmth,
Yeah,
which
I
is
hear you. I'm trying to make it so that it's as objective as possible, right? So,
okay.
um, what is NVC says, if you can record it with a camera, right? If
Uh-huh.
you can hear it and record it with a camera, then it's a fact, right? So, in that context, how would you
I would
frame it?
say it in my way of understanding NBC. I would say it to my partner if I was happening to me. It's just, I would say, honey, I've noticed that lately we're not receiving each other and greeting each other with the warmth we used to. And immediately, you see, when you hear that, your heart opens. I know my heart opens
Mm,
if my partner said that to me. It's just
yeah,
like, oh, I'm sorry. Like that's the first thing. My heart is open.
yeah.
So, and then I go to, I've probably done this job and this work before on myself, and I feel like, how do I feel? What I feel is I feel isolated. I feel isolated. So that's a feeling. Isolation is a feeling. Okay. And I need connection. That's why I chose to be with you as my partner. I need connection. So now you see everything is warm. It's love, connection, warmth. You see everything is going on the right path. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I mean, if my partner is in a really difficult space, they still may go to a difficult place. And that's fine. We don't do this to convince others. We do this to practice a healthy connection and interaction with others. So, and then I would say, would you be willing to spend a few minutes every time you arrive? And I'll do the same. Do you think that's a good idea? And then now we're coming up with a solution for a common problem. I'm not a problem. My partner is not a problem. We have a challenge here. The issue is a triangle. It's not between the two of us. And both of us now are united to solve the third aspect of our relationship, which is an issue of greeting. There's a whole world of greeting and exiting a home that is important in partnership. So now, and the person may or may not be ready. And if you see in like reluctancy, you can say, it doesn't need to be done right now, but I'm just putting it out there. Could you please pass the salt? You change the subject. And you allow that to sink in, because one thing in peaceful communication and mindful communication we need to understand is that just because I'm ready to address this, it doesn't mean that my partner is also ready. And it's because I've been thinking about it, I've been identifying my needs and facts. I'm the ready one. They may just be thinking about their meeting in half an hour. So it's not fair for me to impose it on them with the same intensity as I'm holding it. So if I see any like, oh God, what's going on? I say, just want to leave it out there with you. Let me know when you're ready to speak. And believe it or not, at least in my experience with my partner, sooner or later, that time will arrive that I feel like I can bring it up, or they come and say, I think that that's a good idea to talk about it. And that would be one example. I can also give you an example of professional setting, how I work with, when something happens between a client and myself. So I had a client who consistently and constantly was a weekly client, was coming late. And then they expected the full session. And this was few years ago when I wasn't as very clear as how things need to go in every session. It was like 20, 30 years ago. And I was in the midst of my NVC practice. And so when the person came, I said, have you noticed that we start our meetings late? And the person said, oh, yeah. I said, when that happens, I feel really not present and really anxious because I need to be on schedule and I need to be very, very centered and peaceful when I'm in the session. That's what I'm teaching. I can't be nervous myself while teaching you how to be centered. They said, yes, I understand that. I said, thank you for understanding. Would you be willing to make sure that you come on time? And if you don't, because, there's traffic and this is where it is, no matter what time we start, we're going to finish on time. In fact, to make sure that happens, I'm going to put my alarm on so that we know. And the person said, sure. I said, so you understand if the alarm goes on, that means we've got 5 minutes and we have to come to a stop. Doesn't matter when you have arrived. This was a very important client to me, both their journey and themselves. And I needed to communicate it in a different way because, you can do it in a business way and say, this is it, sorry, bye. But I wanted to explain because they had come a long way in their journey and I didn't want to cut it short. If I tell you magic happened after that session, first of all, the person came late far less often. And secondly, as soon as they arrived, they said, I know I'm late. It's okay. We'll finish at 11:50.
Oh,
So
okay.
they set
Yeah.
the time themselves because I expressed it. It's not always this like success story. I know because we're going to probably get, communication from our listeners saying, yeah, I did that, but the person still came late. And so it happens. But the question is, did I do my best? Did I
Yeah.
represent myself in a healthy way and said what I wanted to say and set the parameters of our exchange in this relationship?
Yeah, and that's the key, right? Is we can't expect it to be perfect every time. There are people who are just not ready. Invariably, when we do this process, we learn so much about ourselves. And invariably, too, a lot of what we thought we had to resolve with the other person, we
Mhm.
can just resolve with ourselves. And that's a
Exactly.
huge success. Yeah.
It is. Would love to hear our listeners and viewers to give us feedback and say if they practice this and if there's anything that is working for them or not working for them, so we can discuss it further because this topic of communication, mindful communication, nonviolent communication is a huge one because that's how we show up in life and in the world.
And if you're interested in learning more about the topic, we'll include some links and resources for you in the show notes. Have a beautiful day, Mitra. Until next time.
See you later.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.